No matter what happens with currency, no matter what happens with banks, no matter what happens with stock markets, our friends and family and our churches and our schools, you want to be successful, adaptable to be able to succeed in any environment. And you want to be prepared so that your growth change based on the environment around it. If anything, you're the one left standing that's able to propel yourself faster and farther. Hey everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people, and for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome to The Point. It is a pleasure to be here and having these conversations with you, and today is no different than that. Today, you're going to have an opportunity to think about how to stay more current, professional, and available to opportunity. It's really about staying available to opportunity regardless of what your surroundings are. There's been a lot of talk lately that I've been hearing. Few of you have shared it with me. I had a really intense conversation the other day with someone that was talking about the amount of chaos, the amount of uncertainty. It just seems to be that there's a lot going on, and most people believe that and feel that. You may have a lot of friends, and you may know people that don't feel that are, for whatever reason, moving forward in the world and finding a different perspective on things. Now, what have you learned about so far about what's the most unique thing about you and who you are that is so unique that it makes you like everyone else? Because everyone has this unique part of themselves, and it's your perspective and your approach to getting things done. That's what makes up the most incredible uniqueness about you, is your approach and your perspective. Only you can have your perspective. And that is oftentimes based on your past, based on what you've already experienced, based on a learning style, based on what information you receive. Depending on all the data points, it's been proven that you can walk down the street and see something every day and not even notice it was there. You can actually walk down a street that you're accustomed to walking down and imagine walking down that street and somebody passing by and waving at you, and you just completely ignoring them and not knowing you ignored them, and that they're then upset or frustrated with you, or their feelings are hurt. And you find out later that that is why. It is more common than you might think if it hasn't happened to you. But imagine if it had, and you came by this awareness that there are moments and times when you are completely in the moment of what you're doing, which might be thinking about something in the future or the past, walking somewhere, driving somewhere, and someone you know sees your face, recognizes your face, and you being in that moment of yourself, don't see them, and now you have a friend that's upset. How do you handle that? How do you process that? Your perspective is that they weren't there. And your approach to life at that moment was being in whatever process you were in. Their perspective was that they did see you. Now, what there's room for in this conversation are the facts of what happened, and the facts being all the stories you're going to tell yourself that may or may not be true. Then if the person who was offended shares it with others, there's going to be additional perceptions and stories about what actually happened that can alter the perception. Fast forward, you see that friend and you feel the sense of a cold shoulder being handed off to you, and now you don't know why. Again, there's facts of what's happening, and then there's the thoughts that you have and the things you make up about that, and then if you share it with someone else, that adds more perspective, more stories, and more things to add to the data points that are coming in, and all of a sudden, this simple thing has become a much bigger scenario. Why are we sharing this? Why are you thinking and imagining about this other than the fact that you were asked to? Here's the deal. In this show, what we're going to dig into is how to increase your resilience and your adaptability at times of uncertainty when you're facing adversity. And we're going to dig a little bit into some science and talking about, there's a lot of talk about IQ, has been for many, many years. And then over the past number of years, we've been looking at and measuring EQ, which is the emotional quotient, which gauges the level of emotional intelligence, how you read a room, what's your level of self-awareness, how empathetic are you. So there's things about the emotional quotient that play into this. Well, then there's also the SQ, which assesses your sociability, your ability to be in groups of people and be social. And if we look at strengths and we look at the different dynamics of strengths and how that plays into it, if you're a woo or other things, we get a lot of data points in all of these things. But there's also the AG, which is more about adaptability and resilience. The AQ is the adversity quotient, and it measures how you handle adverse situations. And there's been some publicity and some writing around what Q is, introducing it as a really valuable and important skill and something to develop because there's an increase of adversity happening in the world and in the workplace with remote working, with stay-at-home jobs, all the different types of career paths that exist with AI, politics, geopolitical issues, and with the things changing in the world. And there's a couple of things that really matter, right? There's this idea that truth really does impact everything. And by truth, I mean facts. Starting in the 50s, there were great advancements made in the US and in the world around farming and different types of agriculture and food production. We put away a lot of holistic remedies, moved into the pharmaceuticals and into the chemicals world. And we now know that we created things and fed them to ourselves, put them in the food chain, in the supply chain, and recommended to our children and fed our children things that were not healthy. On a base level of needs, food, clothing, shelter, safety, we know that we didn't share the truth. We were wrong about a lot of things that was being shared and taught to our youth in that era. And we were, as a culture, proud of it. A manufacturer of milk, it's really easy. Go on the internet and search old school, incorrect things, things we know today that are wrong advertisements. And there's an advertisement, if you find it, on milk and DDT, which is a chemical they were putting in the milk. I don't really know I don't remember exactly what it was. It's since then been banned and not allowed, but they were putting in the milk. It was making it more profitable for the milk producers and the processors to get milk to the consumer. So they were increasing their profitability and raising their prices both at the same time because we as a people were so proud of advancements being made in this way that we bought into it wholeheartedly and said, I want that milk over anything else. And boom. How many dyes have been taken off the market? Red dye because they cause cancer and how many other things. So there's a push and a drive to go back more to holistic. Well, as soon as you know the truth, it changes everything. Now, in some cases with our food supply, sometimes you know the truth, you're told the truth, and it doesn't change anything because it's still the easiest thing to get off the shelf. It's still the thing you have to buy, or that there's not as many options, or you believe that your budget dictates that you don't have the ability to spend the additional money to get something different. That's an entirely different discussion, an entirely different encouragement to eat healthy and look at budgets. It's been proven to me, and I've demonstrated to myself and with my family that we can all eat more naturally and actually save and improve our food budget by eating more natural, whole, and healthy compounds and foods. So there's also the world of supplements, and that's a whole nother story. So let's not cloud the idea of what true and false is with that concept. I could go on a rabbit trail there for days, and you want me to get to the point quickly. And really, what we're also talking about here, because this show's really about taking your strengths and your gifts and what's amazing about you and how that connects into the quantum field so that the ease and effortlessness of who you are can really make the impact that's intended for you to make in the world around you. How can you increase your ability to handle adverse situations? How do you become more resilient and adaptable? And then the number one way that you can do this is actually by demonstrating some of your emotional intelligence. Three ways to do this. One is to consider anything you passionately feel like you believe in. Anything that you really know you're set on it, this is a belief, especially when it's balancing off of something that you don't believe in or don't like. Therefore, you have somewhat of an alternative opinion. But whenever you feel passionate about something, it's a good place to start and just look at, what am I passionate about? Why am I passionate about it? What are the facts versus what are the things I've now made up about it that have helped me continue the storyline to generate and create my belief? Because there's oftentimes a lot of reactivity inside of these things that we're most passionate about. And you will have less of a need to practice self-control if you become more adaptable and flexible. That's one thing, right? Is think through and notice when you're feeling impassioned about something. That's a place to stop and break down the difference between facts and what we're making up about them. Number two is anytime you're quick to react and you have a flinch type of reaction to something where you're turned off by it. You see someone walking down the street, they trip, they stumble, and you might look at them and they're right out in front of a bar. You might immediately consider, oh, look at that drunk falling over themselves in front of the bar. And that very well may be true. There's a lot of data points that recommend or suggest that they're a drunk. And they might have been walking past the bar and tripped and stumbled, whether they caught their balance or not. Let's say they caught their balance and continued walking or decided to stand there for a minute. And you had made up that they were in the bar because of all the other data points. Just an example of how you might see something and make something up based on what the surroundings are. Whereas the facts are, somebody was walking, they tripped, they stumbled, they were in front of a bar. Now, that might seem like a silly practice, because why am I just going to make things up like that? Well, for this show and for your benefit, we get to make up some things for you to imagine so that can laterally transfer into other ways you might open your mind to see these things as you go throughout your week. Now, the third way to do this is just by basic listening and awareness. And just notice anything at all, and as simple as you can. Are you really focused on facts, or are you focused on what you think they mean? Spend time actually noticing. When I do more of that method, I would recommend using a journal. You'll find themes and practices and things that are happening more repetitively. And in that thought of repetitively, what you're noticing, and when you find the patterns, then that's where you dig into that. So spend some time doing those three things and notice facts and notice what you make up about facts and notice how that changes outcomes and really disables you from being able to be more adaptable at work or in your family. You may be in a situation where you try not to keep score or you're not keeping score, but in your family environment, we have a goal to have a certain type of a family environment. And you want a certain type of love and appreciation and acceleration and good things happening in your family. We can be quick to judge in our families. And so that's another area where we are actually grading ourselves or rating ourselves as to how well we're doing and measuring, right? So in environments where we're measuring is where this has the largest impact. It also has the impact for you to be able to thrive in changing environments. Gallup has some studies, and they've released some numbers now that say that we've decreased in our level of engagement in the workplace, and that there's over a $495 million loss globally in productivity based on that decrease of engagement. That is a major global impact that on some level in economics does affect what we're going to pay for things, right? Because a loss of productivity means an increase of cost. which ultimately affects an increase of goods and services. So, why is all of this important? Well, I think what's important to you is that you get to reach your goals and dreams, and that no matter what happens, no matter what happens with currency, no matter what happens with banks, no matter what happens with stock markets, no matter what happens with major corporations and manipulations in the marketplace, no matter what happens with our friends and family and our churches and our schools, you want to be successful and you want to be adaptable to be able to succeed in any environment. And you want to be prepared so that your growth doesn't change based on the environment around it. If anything, you're the one left standing that's able to propel yourself faster and farther. If you're seeing ads that are all based on fear of missing out, the FOMO ads, and it's catching your attention, you want to make sure you're prepared, and that's why that's getting your attention. And if you're feeling stuck in some kind of way, this will oftentimes help unlock and clear those for you, because you're able to check what you're valuing in those decisions and ask, why am I spending energy making something up about that? What am I gaining that might be holding me back? Is it that I feel better about myself because I'm not experiencing whatever it is that I'm making up about it? When I say to the world that I'm feeling judgy, it's usually that's what I'm doing, is I'm looking around and making things up about what people are doing. You ever play the game and when you're on a date or with a friend and you're sitting in a public place and you play the game of looking across the way and seeing two people and having fun making up stories about what they might be saying to each other, or what they're thinking versus what they're saying, or who they really are and where they come from and what their backstory is. These can be really fun things to do. And believe it or not, it can help you increase your awareness. It can almost get it out of your skin, get it out of your way. If you find yourself feeling somewhat fulfilled by having that type of mental activity, if you're looking to keep your mind open creatively, these are great tactics. This isn't a either or type of thing. It's a yes and. It's take the tools and the resources of what helps you feel propelled and feel excited and feel this desire to want to move forward. There's nothing better than wanting to be active and hit your goals. And when you're not in that zone, that's what you'd prefer. Pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself about the things around you, and then really shifting out of the space of that and sticking with the facts and staying curious to learn other people's perspective and what their representation of it is. We're going to wrap this up today for you, because one of the most important things for you to feel great about yourself is that your internal representation of what's going on around you is based on a lot of different things happening. It's how you move your body. It's how you feed your body. It's how you think. It's how you hear. It's what you hear. All your senses are pulling in as far as data points. And your mind is in the business of filtering out things and cataloging things and discarding information and only holding on to what it really needs. Making up things versus sticking with what the fact is about things is one of the number one ways that you can check yourself on what you've automated that isn't true, that is guiding your life in a direction other than where you'd want to be. If you begin to then ask yourself what you're valuing by these stories, what it's doing for you, what are you gaining by telling these stories to yourself, that you then have an opportunity to have a different perspective, stick with the facts and find out what the real truth is. Then you're able to respond to situations versus react to situations, which also increases your EQ. It increases your social quotient because you're able to be more productive and effective socially, because you won't be so quick to jump to ideas about what you're hearing or seeing. Remember the old adage of don't believe anything that you hear and only half of what you see. If that's new for you, think about that. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. Your mind may challenge that and want to try and prove something different that's outside of that box, but you will find more times than not that that is absolutely spot on. That you may hear something, and the trick there is to take it as information and not necessarily buy into the belief until it's confirmed. Staying in an open and curious state and being free to make choices within that state, how you're representing, how the outside world is representing inside of you affects your emotional ability to respond to the world and make good decisions. The level of resourcefulness that you feel to be able to access things greatly changes. So that's the point for today. Increase your ability to stay adaptable, stay flexible, stay agile in the state of all the change and all the things that may be going around you, in and around you in your life. And do this by increasing your level of awareness, and try a practice of noticing these things, noticing what the facts are, noticing what you and even other people around you might make up about that. You'll increase your compassion and understanding for others, and you will find that you're able to be much more responsive and be in a greater place of choice of how you choose to move forward, and be more flexible with how you use your strengths and the best of you to start getting things done. More to come on these types of ideas. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.